Welcome to Kopi-O with CISO Podcast, where I bring you inspiring stories and insights from thought leaders in the world of cybersecurity in Malaysia. In this very first episode, I'm honored to have a very special guest with us. He is a true pioneer in the field of cybersecurity in Malaysia, having played a key role in establishing the National Cybersecurity Company and contributing immensely to the country's cyber risk management initiatives. Throughout his career, he has championed the importance of cybersecurity awareness and education and has led numerous initiatives to enhance the country's cyber resilience. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Prof Jazz, who will share with us his journey, his perspectives on the current cybersecurity landscape, and his insights on what we can do to better protect ourselves and our organizations in the digital age. Welcome to the show, Prof.
Thank you, Sivanathan. Thankful and honored to be invited as a guest for tonight. I've started involved in cybersecurity more than 30 years back when I was with the military in the Malaysian armed forces, specifically the Royal Signals. So what I have done for the past 30 years has always been playing and new development in cybersecurity. So when I was in the military, I initiated the Army IT Center and the Armed Forces Cyber Warfare Center, which now has been changed name to CDOC, which is Cyber Defense Operations Center. That stands for CIDOC. Then I was ICT Security and Emergency Response Center in MIMOS, when MIMOS Berhad was the secretariat for the National IT Council then, in the way back in the year of 2000. And then I was the first director of that center, which is called NICER, which gave birth to CyberSecurity Malaysia, which was founded in the year 2005. And since then, I was the founder and the first CEO of CyberSecurity Malaysia. And altogether, I spent about 12 years to build up that organization. That is briefly on my journey of founding organization. And after that, I went into different areas, joined the academic world in Namibia, Southern Africa, and I was the professor at the Namibia University of Science and Technology, and I was there for more than 80 years before I came back to Malaysia and joined Asia Pacific University, and now I am with Taylor's University. That's pretty much briefly the journey that I've gone through.
Wow, listening to you, to your inspiring story, and I'm very sure that this will also further inspire those budding cybersecurity professionals to delve into this very interesting domain known as cybersecurity.
Yes, I hope so. So what I have learned from this journey is that, among others, I mean, this is briefly the journey. It's more than this. I was in the startup companies. I had experienced failures or not to say failures, is I would say experience hardship in growing up startup companies, and there are upside, downside of it, and all those are enriching experiences that I think that I feel that cybersecurity professional to be should venture into. It was an interesting journey, and last but not least, conclusion to this is I found that cybersecurity skill sets is a very universal skill set in which it can serve you right in Malaysia as well as in the other part of the world. So you can enjoy that privilege of moving jobs from one country to another.
Right. So, the story you just shared very much resonate with me. And for the benefit of the listeners, I am who I am today, being in this particular domain. The main contributor, my journey very much this domain And when I started do my masters, and I still remember Prof UTM, and that's when you encouraged me to apply for a job in NICER back then, right? So I was there, and I witnessed how NICER transformed into Cybersecurity Malaysia. Could you explain a bit more the role that you played and some of the legacies that you left behind?
I think the most instrumental, fundamental contribution is the ability to form a national cybersecurity company, which is sponsored by the government of Malaysia, which is known as CyberSecurity Malaysia now. It demonstrated how cybersecurity can play a role in various critical areas, such as in the government services domain. That was the biggest opportunity that I have had leading the national level cybersecurity agency, in which I took the chance to establish something that are difficult to establish. For instance, being able to bring about common criteria certification to Malaysia, and making Malaysia the first producing member country of common criteria in the world is satisfying in a sense, because that was not an easy job to do. And until today, I think Malaysia marked as one of the countries developing. I think one of few developing countries in that has entered into a producing country member of common criteria. That was one. The other is I was able to set up digital forensics services that supports multiple government agencies in digital forensics. And you were there, Siva, as well. I think you witnessed it
Yeah.
in the sense in the sense that we were able to get certification from the US, the SCLED certification,
Yep.
ASCLD. This certification is not easy to get, and it's very exclusive to the US. And we were audited and validated by the ex FBI group who visited our lab, and since then certify our labs to the US SCLED standard. So that is the second international standard achievements that we have had together in setting up in leading cybersecurity Malaysia. I think there are more than that. I guess for the past because 12 years it was a long time, so there was more achievements to that, in which I may not want to detail out because it take a lot of time. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, just to add on to some of the things that you mentioned, digital forensics, I was very much involved. And then we did, transfer of technology to build one of the first data recovery lab. Technology was transferred from Korea. Not to mention, the strengthening of MyCert and security assurance and various other initiatives, right, under
Yes,
your
yeah.
leadership.
And,
Amazing.
and the unique part about the digital forensic services then was we started to do the convergence of digital forensics from not just the PC base, but we combined the PC, the mobile phone, the CCTV, the multimedia digital forensics into one integrated lab. So that was cool. That was pioneers, that was an idea that was not even tried by many before. So it was good experimenting those part of the work.
Precisely. And you coined the idea of establishing a national reference center for cybersecurity, and I remember that
That's nice.
many government agencies were referring to Cybersecurity Malaysia, leveraging the services of Cybersecurity Malaysia, especially in the space of digital forensics as part of their investigation and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
that's
let's move to another aspect of this session. And having known you for so long, I know that you strongly advocated strengthening the cybersecurity of critical national infrastructure, spearheaded the NCSP, National Cybersecurity Policy or Plan, if you will.
Yes, that's right.
Also, many other initiatives. We as a nation managed to implement a few of those things. Now, reflecting back, how serious do you think cyber threat is a national level threat, given we hardly seen anything remote like the Colonial Pipeline incident in Malaysia, right? Nothing as of that sort that ever threatened our national security. And this is often the topic of the USA for fear of nation states, not so much of others, including us, right? What are your views on this?
Okay, interesting question. My view on this is the level of threats uh, into the critical national information infrastructure now is even more than what it used to be. It's becoming more complex, more sophisticated, and I feel that colonial case was not mentioned in Malaysia does not mean that it didn't happen in Malaysia. A lot of not talk about, not spoken about, and perhaps is a part of the Malaysian way of doing things. We would like to. We are quite shy. I think the Malaysian communities, especially the critical organizations, are very sensitive and very shy of announcing this sort of incidences.
Prof, why do you think is that? Is this a cultural thing or lack of legislation?
It is a mix of both. It is a mix of several factors. The first is lack of legislation, which is very apparent, and then due to the lack of legislation, then the situation allows critical organizations to maneuver in accordance to what is advantage to them, but not really looking into what is the advantage to their clients, or which I feel that it needs to be improved. There are things that to me needs to be made open. From My Sejahtera, for instance, data was leaked, and there were also an incidence of the leak from National Registration Department, where data were floating in the dark web. So these are serious incidences, not to mention airlines leakages and many other sectors which are implicated to this cybersecurity incidences. But all of these was sort of like discussed among those who knows. It's discussed among those who are in the committee, but it wasn't shared throughout the board, throughout the platform, to allow lesson learned for others to. So in other words, by doing this, we are slowing down the awareness of the importance of cybersecurity risk management, especially towards the C level, the strategic levels of managers in Malaysia, because we are not open enough or bold enough to criticize, to talk about, to diagnose what was the problem. And as a result of that, board members were not aware, or if they are hardly aware and understood the entire issues. So as a result of that, changes are rare. Changes are only done when they are forced to do it, or they are only looking for changes as a burden, as a cost factor, instead of as the need for profitability and good names, and also branding for the services that they are doing. So all that is happening because closed ecosystem leads to slower improvements across the board. But I must say that your spin in Bank Negara, in the central bank, introducing the RMIT, the risk management of IT in the financial industry, created and is still creating impact to the improvements of cybersecurity posture in Malaysia. So that is what I can share with you for now.
Yeah, Prof. So, a lot of interesting points you made there. And one that stood out, you mentioned about the buy-in from board members. And I think that's one aspect that, RMIT focused on. And like you mentioned, the financial industry in Malaysia probably ahead of the curve when it comes to regulation and policy setting with regards to cyber risk management. And you also mentioned about the lack of a comprehensive legislative frameworks, right? So, and we know that we have the likes of PDPA, MCMC's Communication and Multimedia Act, Computer Crime Act, and how effective do you think these laws are? And you also touched about the data leakages. It appears to me that we are probably also, as a nation, ahead of the curve when it comes to data breaches. It's just a regular headline news, if you will. But you mentioned airlines. I suppose they face the music by virtue of them being a private company. There's also, other certification like the likes of PCI DSS would have probably, imposed some sort of sanction. But most of the data breaches that we are reading about, right, happening in the government space at the ministerial level, which PDPA is not applicable. So, putting all these together, what's your view with regards to that legislation framework that we have in place? How effective these things are against cyber threat actors? And oftentimes, these are anonymous criminals, and they are probably not residing in our own country, and they are probably residing in countries that we don't have any legislative power.
Yes, I think this is also a good question, a good area to be discussed. Uh, in my view, comparing across countries that I've been through, I must say that the legislative framework, the laws that is been enacted in Malaysia needs to be improved further. The lack of impersonation of identity, it was not strongly spelled out in that Computer Crime Act. Or we're talking about collaborating online crimes with other partners beyond Malaysia. It was not really specifically addressed in that law, right? Okay, that's one. The other, if you're looking into PDPA, Personal Data Protection Act, this is also outdated act, I must say, that need to be revised. I think the Minister of KKD, or Ministry of Communication and Digital, has said that this need to be revised, which is true. So if you look into the European standards, the European Union has introduced General Data Protection Regulation. Okay. It has been so effective in protecting the privacy of UK citizens. That is something that we in Malaysia has to learn from the UK, from the European Union. It doesn't stop the business actually with having that kind of quality of law. It in fact spin a new business direction, creates more jobs to the sectors. So in that context, PDPA in Malaysia has so many exceptions. Government are not judged or are not purviewed under the same law. They are given exception. So these are the things which I think does not set the standard right. If you want to show commitment, it must start with the government. So government has to show commitment of having a good data privacy and data protection standard. So this exemption, to me, if they want to do it only for one clause, exemption for national security, that's it. It doesn't have to mention the whole dozen of exemptions. National security, just because those data are so sensitive, it may jeopardize the defense or the contingency plan of the country in terms of cyber security, in terms of various securities. That is understandable, but it has to be properly defined so that implement data privacy and data protection. So that's what I see. So a lot of improvements need to be done on that side, especially on the enforcement side. So on the enforcement side, it was left to the government agency under the under the Ministry of the Communication and Digital to enforce it, and they don't have enough resources to do that, and do not have enough I would say drive to push it through. And in this sense, I think I have to bring back the blame to the industry as well. Where is the industry looking into this, playing a more active role into helping the PDPA to be well, I would say, enforced? So we have an industry players and industry groups. I believe this could be one of the main agenda of the industry group, helping the country, especially not just the government, to make sure that data protection and data privacy in the context of protecting the businesses and ensuring the business are well safeguarded in that sense is to be played. So I see an absence of industry players, industry champions that works together with the government. I guess maybe working in silos, the government feels that enforcement belongs to us, and industry has no role in that. So I guess that silo mentality did not work in the sense of getting everybody to have the same page in terms of data privacy and data protection.
Agree, Prof. This is something that, in my previous life that we've been advocating at industry level, national level, when it comes to cybersecurity or data privacy, the relationship, that information sharing, the bridging between, public and private sectors. So on that same note, even from my vantage point, I do feel or think that the private sector is probably doing more with regards to strengthening and bolstering their cyber defense. We talked about how RMIT is a game changer, and that has got a cascading effect or spillover effect across the rest of the industry. Like, for instance, now, when you deal with the bank will tell the third-party service provider or even the fourth-party service provider, hey, look, you need to comply with RMIT, right? So that's the kind of chain reaction that it has created. And on that note, I do feel that many of private companies, especially those in tech space, investing a lot in beefing up their cybersecurity defense. We also talked about the data breach at one of the airline companies. Now, I'm thinking whether incentivizing these companies is the way to go in further ensuring that private companies pay more attention to cyber hygiene. Not so sure it's in our national agenda in the form of tax break. Like, for instance, if they implement sufficient cyber controls as opposed to most regulations that tend to punish the organization for falling victim of cyber attack. I always feel that regulations are good, but sometimes they are enforced in the wrong time. Like, for instance, imagine the company has already suffered a cyber breach and the regulators go in and punish them to make them more miserable, right? It seems counterintuitive to me. Going by whatever you just covered, what sort of incentives that the government can provide for the private company, especially the SMEs, to invest more, to think about cyber hygiene more?
Right. This is interesting question, though. I believe that, in my opinion, carrot and stick must work hand in hand. So on one hand, we need to introduce laws and regulation. On the other hand, industry and needs and also digital citizen needs to be incentivized for being a good practitioner to what has been promoted through legislation and regulations. So in this context, if you're talking about, just put a good example. Not long ago, National Cybersecurity Agency has launched Malaysia Cybersecurity Strategy (MCCS) as a 5-year strategic plan for
Yep,
Malaysia.
I think that was in 2020.
Yeah, but what happened to that plan? It didn't take off because there is no legislative power or there's no stick that comes along it, and not only there is no stick, there is also no carrot. For instance, ensuring that compliances as a part of services procurement should also be introduced comprehensively towards encouraging much more secure cyber security and cyber safety environment. So that is, of course, this is a very interesting subject. And how do you incentivize? There's a lot of way to incentivize. For instance, like creating, incentivizing and creating the growth of local industry at the same time is something that we can do. It is not difficult to do. While we are in compliance with regulation, we can also grow the industry to support the compliance to the regulation. That can be done. What it takes to do this is leadership and vision and innovation and taking some risks and experimentation to do it, and which many of us in cybersecurity field many of us has the character of playing safe. So we want to be safe and not to be made accountable. So then change can hardly happen beyond what we can see.
That makes a lot of sense, Prof. Yeah. So to pick one of the interesting points you made with regards to carrot and stick, right? So it's important for us to draw the line between pure negligence and highly sophisticated attack. So by having a program at national level, that will help those suffered from data breaches to determine the extent of the regulatory penalties, punishment by the boundaries of the law. Because if we have a program to incentivize the practice of cyber hygiene, and if companies or SMEs or private sector, they invest and put in place those measures, and then we will know that that's the data breach, not pure negligence. It could have been a highly sophisticated attack that could not have been prevented by having these cybersecurity or cyber hygiene measures, if you will. The company could have limited the damage.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, we have passed half hour mark. Yeah, I would like to switch gear and ask about, apart from your current role, do you do anything else given the vast domain of cybersecurity, right? Maybe you just do something else for fun.
For now, I'm shifting my focus towards the human factors of cybersecurity, because when we learn about cybersecurity during in our cybersecurity courses, we always promote cybersecurity has 3 segments. The first segment is the technological side. The second segment is the governance and processes. And the third segment is people factors. It's the people side. So I feel that time has passed, and those days when I designed cybersecurity Malaysia, the thoughts was very much technical centric, is to become the reference center and to provide technical support to the government agencies who needs to function and who needs to enforce the laws and also to protect the industry somehow in a very limited sense, and also to educate the public as much as we can. But now I feel that cybersecurity and the movement of cybersecurity has gone into a stage of convergence of three main areas, which is the cybersecurity side, the data privacy side, and the third one is the cyber safety side. So these are the 3 main component that has to be looked at together in order to make it effective. So one of the clear area that has huge gap is the safety side of cybersecurity, the human side. how do we look at cybersecurity from a safety perspective? So I think I'm working on some projects like e-safety channel and the like to promote and to increase awareness on the strategic change in cybersecurity area that everyone has to respond to.
Right. So really, really interesting there, Prof. You mentioned about people process technology. That is very close to my heart. And in fact, in my current role, that is something that I strongly advocate. There is this current notion in the industry that, and it's also partly driven by vendors, right? They are selling toolings. And people think that, throwing money at technology will solve all your cybersecurity problems, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
And one approach that I always take is that, and also apart from ISO 27001 NIST cybersecurity framework is very close to my heart. I always use that framework to implement a cybersecurity program in any organizations that I go to. And, in the NIST, it has got this IPDRR, identify, protect, detect, response, cover. And if you plot these five, next to each other, and then you create that continuum, people, process, technology, and you will notice that technology plays a more important role at the beginning of that matrix, if you will. And over time, as you go through the detection, response, and recover, it will sort of dwindle down. And that's where the people aspect becomes a lot more important. You need human intervention to do response and recovery. And if you look at process, it's pretty much, needed across board. Without having a proper governance, proper process, you're not going to have a sustainable cyber defense program in place. And also, you mentioned about cyber safety and all that. Not sure what's your take on this notion where people always claim humans are the weakest link. I totally don't believe that. In fact, with the right education, right awareness, like you mentioned, you can really transform humans into becoming a formidable first line of defense, if you will, for any organization. And cybersecurity awareness program is one of the things that I always emphasize wherever I go. And I've seen huge benefit to the overall and the broader cybersecurity program for organizations when you cultivate the culture of cybersecurity, you strengthen and enhance the cybersecurity awareness of your people, right? You empower them. Right. I suppose that's where you are heading to, and that definitely warrant a separate podcast session, I suppose, to talk about your cyber safety aspiration.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
That's
great.
right.
I
But
mean, it's amazing to know that you continue to be so inspired by being in this space for 30 years.
Yeah.
You are a true army man, if you will. Yeah. So, Prof, finally, if you had a chance to do something totally different with regard to national cybersecurity, what would that be?
I'm okay. I'm looking forward to see the setup of the commission, the cybersecurity commission. It was talked about by the minister. I feel that cybersecurity commission is one of the effective ways to consolidate divergence in cybersecurity needs. That is something that I'm looking forward to see how that will change the landscape will improve the landscape of cybersecurity in Malaysia. And I also would like to see that the cyber safety aspect to be more understood and to be further escalated into a level where everyone understands that cyber safety is not just about awareness. Cyber safety is about managing personal risks and job risks. When you are interacting with any kind of services in the digital world. So as in the physical world, you have something like the law called OSHA, the Occupational and Health Safety Act. Likewise, in the digital world, digital OSHA needs to be introduced in the form of cyber safety. That every job out there that deals with digital interaction has the job risks, and this risk has to be systematically managed through cyber safety regulation. And we are not talking only about jobs; we are talking about fellow citizens, schools, preschools, teachers, individuals who are being scammed online. How do we address? How do we help them? They are not supported by organizational fund. Their funds are limited, and and their ability to pursue justice is even far lesser than what companies can do. So, what should be our take in looking into and in protecting our own digital citizen? So these are the what lingering in my mind. I suppose and I hope somehow these concerns can be addressed very soon.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the final words. And again, thank you so much for coming on to this show. It has been a pleasure having you on board. And what wonderful session that we had. Amazing insights you shared with us. Looking forward to see you in action. And thank you for joining me for the very first episode of Kopi-O with CISO, your go-to source for insights on the latest cybersecurity trends and best practices in Malaysia. I hope you found today's discussion informative and engaging. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more insights with you on my next episode. Until then, keep calm and secure on.